In the complex world of attraction, desire, and hidden emotions, one question has puzzled men for centuries. What does a woman truly feel when you're not around? Most men assume that if they step back, if they become absent, the woman simply forgets them. But reality is far more intricate. Female psychology does not operate in simple lines of logic. It thrives on subtle tension, on presence within absence, on the invisible weight of what is missing. Slavoj Žižek, one of the most provocative philosophers of our time, reminds us that desire is always structured around lack. In other words, it's not what is present that often drives our emotions, but what is absent, what cannot be fully grasped, what is left hanging in silence. This idea directly applies to relationships because when a man is not around, his absence itself begins to speak louder than his presence ever did. In today's video, we will explore the psychology of what a woman really feels when you're not around, uncovering the hidden truths that most men ignore. Through the lens of Žižek's philosophy, combined with timeless observations about human behavior, we will break this into 7 powerful insights. Each part will reveal the emotional undercurrents that shape attraction, longing, and the deep psychological game that unfolds in your absence. Let's begin. Part 1. The shock of absence. When you step out of a woman's daily environment, when you stop texting, stop calling, or simply stop being present, the first thing she feels is the shock of absence. This is not necessarily sadness, but disruption. Human beings are creatures of pattern, and women, like men, become attuned to the rhythms of interaction. If you have been consistently available, even in small ways, your sudden silence creates a disturbance. Žižek would say that this disruption is not just about missing you, it's about destabilizing her symbolic universe. She begins to ask, why did he disappear? What does this mean? Did I lose something valuable? The absence makes her rethink the meaning of your presence. This shock does something subtle. It plants curiosity. It makes her wonder if she miscalculated your importance. And in psychology, curiosity often evolves into emotional investment. Because now, you are no longer predictable. You are not following the script of constant availability. You are not like the rest. You become a question mark in her mind, and human beings cannot resist the urge to solve unanswered questions. Most men fear pulling back, because they believe absence will kill attraction. In reality, absence, when used with dignity and confidence, creates a powerful space that forces her to confront her own feelings. It compels her to recognize what she took for granted. Part 2. The mirror of desire. After the initial shock, something deeper begins to unfold. A woman starts to look at her own emotions as if through a mirror. Žižek explains that desire is not simply about wanting something. It is about wanting what we believe the other desires. This means that when you're not around, she begins to project onto you the idea of independence, mystery, and choice. If you are absent, she wonders, who has his attention? Why isn't he chasing me like others do? Does he have options I don't know about? In her attempt to explain your absence, she mirrors her own desire back to herself. She starts to feel that you are not merely absent, you are desirable precisely because you are not in her control. This is the paradox of attraction. What we cannot fully possess often becomes the most magnetic. By stepping away, you stop being just another man in her orbit. You become an enigma, someone who cannot be easily decoded. And women, especially in the realm of attraction, are drawn to puzzles far more than to open books. In this stage, absence transforms into intrigue. Your silence doesn't communicate weakness, it communicates strength. The kind of strength that says, I don't need you to validate me. My life is full with or without your attention. This is not arrogance. It is sovereignty over your own value. She begins to feel not just your absence, but the presence of a man who stands on his own, who lives with depth, who does not bend his life around her availability. And that mirror of desire makes her confront something uncomfortable, that she may want you more than she is willing to admit. Once the intrigue of your absence takes hold, the next emotional layer begins to emerge: fear of replacement. A woman may not admit it out loud, but when a man is no longer readily available, the possibility arises in her mind that he might be giving his time, energy, and attention to someone else. Žižek often speaks about the way absence creates a phantom presence, meaning the mind fills in the gaps with imagination. When you are not there, she begins to imagine where you might be, who you might be with, and what you might be doing. This uncertainty generates anxiety. And paradoxically, this anxiety increases her emotional connection to you. Female psychology is highly sensitive to social dynamics. If you are absent, she considers whether your value is being noticed elsewhere. This sparks comparison. Am I being outshined by another woman? Am I losing what I once had? Even if you are not seeing anyone else, the very possibility of it unsettles her. This fear of replacement is powerful because it is tied to ego as much as to emotion. Women, like men, want to feel unique, irreplaceable, and desired. When you pull away, you unintentionally challenge that belief. You create a vacuum where her certainty used to be, and in that vacuum, fear and desire become entangled. But here is the key. This fear does not necessarily push her away. On the contrary, it often pushes her closer, because the thought of being replaced makes her want to reclaim her position in your world. Your absence, therefore, becomes a silent reminder of your value. Part 4. The battle between pride and longing. After fear comes conflict. At this stage, a woman experiences the battle between pride and longing. On one hand, she may tell herself, "I don't need him. I'm fine without him. If he's not here, I'll move on." But on the other hand, she feels the undeniable pull of missing you, of wondering why your absence weighs heavier than she expected. Slavoj Žižek explains that in human relationships, contradictions are not flaws but the very essence of desire. We can simultaneously want and resist, love and deny, crave and reject. In a woman's psychology, this duality becomes especially sharp when you're not around. Her pride tells her not to care. Her pride says she should be above missing you. Yet the more she resists, the more she secretly proves to herself that she does care. Every time she checks her phone to see if you texted, every time she scrolls back to old conversations, every time she catches herself thinking of you while trying not to, her pride loses ground to longing. And here lies the deeper truth. Longing has more endurance than pride. Pride is loud, but short-lived. Longing is silent, but it lingers. Over time, your absence strengthens longing, and even if she tries to cover it with distractions, the emotional weight keeps pulling her back. This inner conflict makes her emotions more intense than they ever were when you were present. Because presence is predictable, but absence amplifies everything that was hidden beneath the surface. Part 5. The romanticization of memory. As absence stretches longer, something fascinating occurs in the human mind. Memory begins to romanticize the past. Psychologists call this idealization. When someone is not around, our memory doesn't replay reality exactly as it was. It filters it, reshapes it, and exaggerates the best parts. For a woman, this process turns your presence into something larger than life. She remembers your humor as sharper, your voice as warmer, your presence as stronger than it really was. Small moments you shared take on amplified meaning. Even ordinary interactions become golden in hindsight. Žižek would argue that this is how ideology works. We don't just remember reality. We create a version of it that fits our emotional needs. In this case, your absence allows her to construct an idealized version of you in her mind. You become not just a man she knew, but a man she remembers with heightened significance. This romanticization has a powerful effect on attraction. While presence can sometimes reveal flaws, absence blurs them. She forgets the small irritations and recalls only the highlights. You are no longer just a person, you are a memory that glows brighter than reality. And here is the paradox. The less she sees you, the more she may feel you. The imagination fills the void, and in that process, you become more magnetic, not less. Your absence becomes a canvas upon which she paints the most flattering picture of you. This is why distance, when managed with strength and authenticity, can often deepen attraction more than constant closeness ever could. As time passes without your presence, something profound begins to happen. Emotional dependency starts to grow. This doesn't mean she becomes weak, but rather that her emotions increasingly orbit around the thought of you. Your absence transforms you from just a man into a central figure in her emotional landscape. Slavoj Žižek often points out that desire thrives not in satisfaction but in its postponement. When something is withheld, it doesn't disappear, it multiplies in intensity. Similarly, when you are not around, her emotional energy doesn't vanish. It concentrates. She finds herself thinking about you in moments she didn't expect. At night when she lies awake, during the day when she scrolls through her phone, even in conversations with others, your shadow lingers. The irony here is powerful. When you are present all the time, she might have felt secure enough to overlook you. But in your absence, she starts to realize how much her emotions are tied to you. This dependency can manifest in subtle ways. Checking your social media, noticing who interacts with you, replaying your words in her head. The more she tries to escape the thought, the more tightly it grips her. And this dependency is not just about romance, it is about identity. She begins to feel that something is missing, that her sense of completeness has been altered by your absence. Here, the absence doesn't weaken your bond. It exposes its depth. It shows her that you were not just another figure in her life, you were someone whose absence reshapes her emotional reality. Part 7. The Awakening of Respect. Finally, after cycling through shock, curiosity, fear, longing, and dependency, a deeper recognition emerges: respect. A woman begins to realize that your absence was not a sign of neglect, but a demonstration of self-respect. Unlike many men who chase endlessly, you showed restraint. Unlike those who crumble without attention, you stood firm in your independence. Žižek often argues that true freedom is not found in doing whatever you want, but in not being enslaved by the desires of others. Your absence communicated exactly that you are not enslaved by her validation, by constant attention, or by the fear of being forgotten. This awakens respect because it reveals your strength. Women may be entertained by men who are always available, but they respect and admire men who can walk away, who can choose solitude, who can say through their silence, "My value does not depend on your approval." At this stage, she doesn't just feel attraction. She feels reverence. She sees you not as a boy needing validation, but as a man who commands respect through action, not words. Your absence spoke more loudly than any presence could, and in this awakening, something crucial is revealed. True attraction is not built on constant proximity, but on the recognition of value, independence, and strength. Ending. The power of absence. So, what does a woman really feel when you're not around? She feels the shock of disruption, the mirror of desire, the fear of replacement, the conflict between pride and longing, the romanticization of memory, the pull of emotional dependency, and finally, the awakening of respect. Slavoj Žižek reminds us that absence is not emptiness, it is a form of presence. Your silence, your restraint, your independence, they all speak a language louder than words. They create desire, they awaken curiosity, and they establish value. For men, the lesson is clear. Do not fear being absent. Do not fear stepping back. When you live with dignity, purpose, and self-respect, your absence becomes more powerful than the presence of 1,000 ordinary men. Remember this. It is not chasing that creates respect, it is the courage to let your silence do the talking. A woman may not always confess it, but when you are not around, your absence forces her to see the truth, that your presence was never ordinary, and that your value was never negotiable. Be the man whose silence carries weight, whose absence creates longing, and whose self-respect commands admiration. Because in the end, true strength is not proven when you are everywhere. It is proven when you can walk away and still remain unforgettable.